Now, Walz is weird, but he disguises it under the costume of phony compassion, a fake politician who masks destructive ideas under the guise of empathy. At a 2017 town hall, he implied 10-year-old boys should be able to invade girls' bathrooms because it's all about...
Tim Walz is now saying about Trump supporters, and forgive me, I'm just reading a quote from Tim Walz, I think I could kick most of their ass.
Oh boy, he'd be in trouble.
Is there any way to know?
Well, he's a loser. You know, I mean, the guy's a loser.
I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met Tim Walz.
Think you've heard it all? Not even close. This political disaster swerved off the rails and crashed straight into chaos. Greg Gutfeld joined forces with Donald Trump, yes, that duo, to roast Tim Walz like fireworks on Independence Day. One moment Walz is delivering speeches, the next he's twisting himself into knots, dodging barbed sarcasm and exploding egos. What sparked the storm? Why is Minnesota suddenly in the spotlight? Let's just say, it's more humiliating than a bad karaoke night at Mar-a-Lago.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank and service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away.
I think I would have won. Susie would say I would have won Pennsylvania easily anyway, even if the governor ran, the real governor, not the governor from Minnesota, he's a sick puppy, that guy. That poor guy, I feel sorry for him. But they made a bad choice with him.
They say true leadership requires vision, but Tim Walz must have misread that as television, because the only screen he seems devoted to is the one airing his next cringeworthy press conference. He'll blame anything, gravity, the weather, maybe even Greg Gutfeld for the chaos piling up on his watch. Walz runs Minnesota like it's a glitchy video game with every disaster mode switched on and no cheat codes in sight. Think potholes are a nightmare? His policies make them look like harmless speed bumps, deep, unavoidable, and perfectly placed to wreck everything in their path.
With Walz, it's hard to even bring him up. He has a resting snitch face. You know? He forfeited his man card during COVID and the riots. And you're right. And also, at that diner, of course, he left early. So don't you find it weird that for a terrifying threat to democracy that Trump is, not a single interviewer in his history has approached him with trepidation?
If you are enjoying this breakdown, please hit that subscribe button. Minnesota under Walz has become the political version of a frozen casserole shoved in the fridge since 2020. Bland, outdated, and faintly radioactive. But he's serving it up again, this time with a fresh plate of excuses. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld buzzing with sarcasm like a raccoon on caffeine, and Trump swinging with the force of a wrecking ball strapped to a monster truck teamed up to roast this walking press release into ashes.
Yeah, this one's a clue. We saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear it.
Gutfeld didn't even need notes. The jokes practically wrote themselves. This is the guy who locked Minnesota down so tightly during the pandemic, it felt like even Wi-Fi signals were under quarantine. With all that executive power, you'd think he could have fixed at least one thing. But no, the roads still look like the surface of the moon. Taxes are so high they're bleeding out. And crime, don't even ask. Under Walz, Minneapolis turned into a real-life GTA server, minus accountability and with even worse graphics.
I'm especially talking about these old white guys who seem to disappoint us on a regular basis in this country.
Dude, you're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly.
And his big solution? Throw more money at committees, studies, and advisory panels. Political duct tape slapped over problems that need real fixes. Walz' strategy is simple: stall, delay, and hope the mess eventually organizes itself. It's like he's thinking, if I ignore it long enough, maybe it'll unionize and demand a raise.
Are people misreading Tim's odd greeting? The man of the hour, Tim Walz, brings us our second video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it. I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh yeah, weird.
Then Trump bursts onto the scene, the chaotic neutral force Minnesota never requested but clearly earned. He scans Walz' track record and laughs like someone just handed him a shiny participation trophy for most ineffective executive in the Midwest. Sure, Trump's got his own catalog of scandals, but standing next to Walz, he suddenly looks like Churchill, if Churchill wore a MAGA hat. At least Trump does something. It might be controversial, incoherent, and almost always shouted in all caps, but it's still action. Walz, by comparison, is the undisputed king of inertia. He governs like a substitute teacher stuck on autopilot. Lots of noise, zero control. The only thing moving in Minnesota is the mass migration of businesses and residents loading up U-Hauls like it's a reverse Oregon Trail. Only here you don't die of dysentery. You collapse under progressive, policy-induced bankruptcy. And speaking of businesses, under Walz' reign, Minnesota became the state where corporations go to drown in regulations so suffocating they start missing California. One small business owner reportedly tried opening a lemonade stand and wound up buried under a zoning permit, a carbon offset plan, and a 12-step environmental audit. All this just for citrus. And education? You'd think a former teacher could handle schools. Instead, he's turned classrooms into political playgrounds where algebra is negotiable, but pronoun quizzes are mandatory. The only score rising in Minnesota classrooms is the sheer level of confusion.
She picked a radical left man that is, he's got things done that he has positions that are just not, it's not even possible to believe that they exist. I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met Tim Walz.
Trump stands off to the side, arms folded, watching Walz stumble through press conferences like a dad struggling to set up Wi-Fi. And Gutfeld? He's practically glowing, turning Walz into a walking punchline. He once quipped that watching Tim Walz lead is like watching a squirrel drive a forklift. Funny at first until you realize the wreckage is permanent. The only thing Walz delivers consistently is contradiction. He'll roll out sweeping climate initiatives, then hop into a state-issued SUV with the gas mileage of a jet engine. He'll boast about defending workers' rights until union workers ask for accountability. Then suddenly, now's not the right time. Translation, he never expected anyone to actually hold him to his promises. And then there was the spectacle of his pandemic policy. 1 minute Walz is treating the science like it's holy scripture. The next he's decreeing that bars must close at 10 p.m., as though COVID stops being contagious once the clock strikes 10. Brilliant logic. Trump openly mocked the absurdity. Walz kept gyms shut down while liquor stores stayed open, painting Minnesota's public health plan in one clear slogan: less fitness, more forget it.
On Minnesota, there were a lot of horrific details that came out today about the suspect who's been charged there. Have you called the governor yet or been able to speak to any of them?
I don't really call him. Look, I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling. Why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess. So, I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?
We got ourselves in this mess because we weren't bold enough to stand up and say, you damn right we're proud of these policies. We're going to put them in, and we're going to execute it.
So, wait, you lost because you weren't woke enough? That's like telling Joy Behar she's not eating enough Doritos. That's like Jasmine Crockett saying, I gotta black this up.
And somehow, Walz keeps a straight face, like a man convinced no one has noticed the whole house burning down around him. When asked about crime in Minneapolis, he launches into vague speeches about community engagement as if he's pitching a yoga class to a SWAT team. Meanwhile, residents are downloading crime apps the way others stream Netflix. His economic plans, more like a blueprint to leave the economy stuck in the basement, dripping under a pipe labeled tax policy. He pushes for higher taxes on the wealthy, which in Minnesota translates to anyone who somehow scraped enough together to pay rent last month. Gutfeld doesn't just roast him, he grills Walz like it's Independence Day, and Walz showed up in a shirt that reads, I banned fireworks. And then there's the cosmic comedy of Gutfeld and Trump, two loudmouths with opposite styles, joining forces in disbelief that Walz is still in power. The more backlash he gets, the deeper he digs in, like a blackjack player doubling down on a losing hand. Criticize his budget, he tosses more money at the problem. Question his handling of law enforcement, he responds with a shiny slogan. It's as if he believes public safety can be restored with motivational posters. And let's not forget the reimagining policing fiasco in Minneapolis. That was Walz's moment to lead, to say, maybe don't dismantle the entire force during a crime surge. Instead, he tiptoed like a dad too nervous to tell his toddler no. The result? Chaos, confusion, and a crime spike that left Minneapolis looking more like Gotham than the bold North.
The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years.
Gutfeld's segments on Walz could pass as therapy sessions for Minnesotans who just want to hear someone say out loud what they're already thinking. Their governor couldn't organize a sock drawer, let alone run a state. Trump, never one to pass up a stage, jumps in gladly, mocking every pothole, every failed policy, even every questionable haircut Walz has ever had. And speaking of appearances, doesn't Walz always look like a man desperately trying to appear confident while secretly Googling how to be governor under the podium? At this point, it's a miracle his press team hasn't unionized out of sheer exhaustion. Then there's the state budget. Under zeros, it ballooned faster than his stack of excuses. Taxpayer dollars flew out the door like they were on fire, straight into vanity projects, bureaucratic mazes, and enough studies to make PhD candidates cry. And what did Minnesotans get in return? A handful of promises, a couple of confusing flowcharts, and a crushing bill. Even Trump, who's never shied from throwing money around like confetti, was dumbfounded. You're trying to bankrupt the state? It looked like a bad strategy from the start. And spoiler, it failed. Walz treats feedback like spam mail, glances at it, deletes it, then blames the sender. He once bragged about taking bold action on infrastructure. People cheered, but bold action turned out to be consultants making PowerPoints about potholes. Meanwhile, Gutfeld's out here comparing Minnesota's highways to something straight out of Mad Max.
Quote, as a teacher, my number one responsibility in the classroom is the safety, security, and belongingness of every single child in that room. These are children my son's age, a fourth grader, a 10-year-old who just wants to go to the bathroom, and their identity is they are male or female, and they just go in that bathroom and use it, end quote. Sounds so folksy, you know? Belongingness. Yeah, they'll be belonging in therapy with this guy at the helm.
And then there's Walz's war on landlords. Rent control policies that looked catchy on Twitter but collapsed in reality like a live-action eviction notice served to common sense. Small landlords are bailing, big landlords are hiking rents, and tenants are stuck in limbo. Walz's fix? A task force. Political code for 4 months of meetings just to define the word problem. Trump and Gutfeld could only sit back and watch the train wreck unfold in slow motion. Minnesota, the state that gave us Prince, Bob Dylan, and 10,000 Lakes, now looks like it's being run like a college dorm where the RA never shows up. Gutfeld even joked that Walz's leadership style is PowerPoint governance with a heavy focus on public confusion. And confusion sums up transportation under Walz. Projects delayed, budgets blown, expectations lowered. He pushed for new light rail expansions but forgot the key part. Trains are supposed to run on time, or even exist. Even Trump's infamous Infrastructure Week, a running political punchline, had more coherence than this mess. The only thing moving in Walz' transportation agenda is paperwork, backward. Ask him what he's proudest of, and he'll probably point to some vague climate statistic while ignoring the diesel fumes choking from his own government fleet. You know it's bad when even Trump's private jets look cleaner by comparison.
So this is Governor Walz. There he is. Do you know we're the same age? I know. I know. He looks like the founder of a law firm specializing in personal injury. He looks like the guy at church who remarries 1 month after his wife mysteriously passes away. He looks like the high school football coach who made sure everyone showered after practice.
If this keeps up, Tim Walz might qualify for his own late-night show. Clueless in the Capitol. No guests, no budget, no solutions. Just one man, a microphone, and a pile of executive orders he forgot to read back in 2019. Call it tragic, call it comedy. Just don't call it leadership. And right when you think Walz has exhausted his bag of bad ideas, he unveils another bold step backward. His climate plan, basically a Pinterest board of half-baked dreams, paper straws, and solar panels that only seem to work on Wednesdays. Meanwhile, rural Minnesotans are still driving 45 minutes just to find a grocery store that hasn't been taxed into another dimension. Even Gutfeld couldn't resist laughing. Walz somehow took one of the most resource-rich states in the nation and managed it like a doomed group project. At this point, the state bird might as well be a tax auditor. And then there's Trump, barely containing his amusement as Walz explains economic recovery with the confidence of someone who just Googled what GDP stands for. Every speech sounds like it was written by an AI trained on motivational posters and cereal box slogans. No urgency, no direction, just a man shuffling PowerPoint slides while the whole building burns. Yet he still pauses for applause, like a magician who forgot the trick, lost the rabbit, and accidentally sawed himself in half. But hey, at least the bunker Wi-Fi works.
To stop it. And when it's a child, you talk to them and you tell them why bullying's wrong. But when it's adult like Donald Trump, you bully the out of him back. This is a weak, cruel man that takes it out and punches down on people.
Wow. Oh.
Tim Walz, an endless reel of excuses, contradictions, and policies that collapse the moment they touch reality. He isn't leading Minnesota forward, he's dragging it in circles, hoping nobody notices the scenery never changes. Gutfeld turned him into a punchline, Trump turned him into a spectacle, and together they revealed what many already suspected. Walz isn't the steady hand he claims to be. He's the distraction, the filler, the man in the suit who talks while everything around him falls apart. Minnesota deserves better than confusion packaged as leadership, better than slogans recycled as solutions, better than a governor whose greatest talent is surviving his own mistakes. In the end, Walz doesn't stand as a symbol of progress. He stands as a warning, a reminder of what happens when politics becomes performance, and leadership is left to burn with the house he swears isn't on fire.